What if Darth Vader was actually a clone of Anakin? In a timeline that we know and love, Anakin becomes more machine than man and transforms into the monstrosity known as Darth Vader. However, on one of our old videos, one of our viewers wondered what if instead Vader was a clone of Anakin, not the actual person. This one's going to be a doozy, folks, so I hope that you have your spotchka in hand and are ready to go, unless you're underage, of course. Now, without any further delay, let's hop right into today's story. Our tale begins on Coruscant, following Mace Windu's order to Anakin to remain away from the temple until he told him to return. In our timeline, Anakin actually decides to listen to Mace's order, and he ruminates in silence over the streets of the grand Coruscant city. While he is heavily tempted to intervene, he trusts that Master Windu, despite their disagreements in the past, had the best intentions for the galaxy at heart when he went to confront Palpatine. In addition, Anakin still feels betrayed by the secret Sith Lord, and he is hesitant to help a man that had been lying to him for years on end. After all, how could Anakin trust anything else that man said after he had been deceived about his identity for over a decade? While the Jedi Council had lied in the past, Anakin knows that the Order as a whole was filled with good, honest people. He couldn't say the same for Palpatine. As Anakin waits, we will go with the interpretation of this fight that the only reason Mace defeated Palpatine in the Revenge of the Sith is because Sidious knew that Anakin was going to intervene, and so he held back further to manipulate the Chosen One. In this scenario, Sidious defeats Windu handily, especially since he doesn't sense Anakin coming to intervene, and he orders the immediate execution of Order 66 for treason against the Republic. Just wait, the clone part is coming, don't you worry. How does this impact the rest of our story? Well, let's keep going and find out. When Padme returns to her apartment, she finds Anakin there, waiting. He's still staring out the window, wondering what happened to Master Windu. He also sees smoke pouring from the Jedi Temple, and he wonders if he should go to help. He senses something dark in the Force. Padme encourages him to remain with her and to stay safe. There have been rumors about the Jedi committing treason against the Republic, something that Padme knew couldn't be true. Anakin's stomach does a swan dive as he realized what has happened. Windu had gone to confront the Chancellor, and things had become violent. That's why he hadn't heard from Mace. Palpatine had been far more powerful than any of them could have anticipated, and clearly he had defeated even the legendary Mace Windu. Anakin turns around, his cloak billowing, and he tells Padme that he had to go now. Padme tells Anakin to wait, as perhaps events would settle down quickly. However, Anakin is convinced that he must confront the Chancellor immediately. He rushes away on his speeder, and he immediately moves towards the Chancellor's office. Meanwhile, during this time, Obi-Wan and Yoda manage to escape the horrors of Order 66, and they still meet up at the Jedi Temple following the clone massacre there. Because Anakin was not leading the charge in this timeline, many more Jedi managed to escape. However, because of the training and overwhelming number of clones that attack the temple, there are still significant losses. Obi-Wan and Yoda still program the secret message to any surviving Jedi to remain away from the temple, but then they sense Anakin's presence at the Senate building, along with his anger. The two of them go to see what rash action he had taken this time, and when they find him in Palpatine's office, they see that the newly proclaimed Emperor had sliced off Anakin's other hand, and he was currently electrocuting him with Force lightning, taking immense pleasure in himself. Yoda immediately jumps in and redirects the lightning before Obi-Wan drags Anakin backwards out of the line of fire. Obi-Wan tends to Anakin, taking him back to Bail's ship, and Yoda distracts Palpatine. While Yoda knows that he likely won't be able to defeat the Dark Lord on his own, he also knows that the three Jedi, if they escaped, could train to take him down together for certain. The duel between Yoda and Palpatine goes much the same as it did in Revenge of the Sith, and Yoda escapes. Palpatine sees Anakin's hand on the floor in his office, and he gets an idea. Perhaps, even if he couldn't turn the young man to his side, he could still have the apprentice of his twisted dreams. He saves the hand, and when Nala Se is relocated to the secret Imperial facility on Wayland to work in the Empire's service, Palpatine commissions her to directly try and make a stable, Force-sensitive clone using the same DNA. Because Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side, he is present for the birth of his children. He holds Padme's hand as Luke and Leia see the light of day, and he promises to help raise them alongside her, no matter what it took. Obi-Wan and Yoda are also on Polis Massa, and they discuss their future. In the end, they believed it would be better for them to remain close to the children as to aid in their training. And in this scenario, they go to Polis Massa to be a secret location for Padme to give birth, rather than doing it in some grand public space. When they tell Anakin about their plans, he agrees. Obi-Wan and Yoda go to live in the swamps with the Gungans on Naboo, welcomed by Boss Nass, who has once again risen up to lead his people during this tumultuous time. Anakin says that Padme needs to do her duties as a senator, as the galaxy needed her there most to battle the coming wave of tyranny. Anakin says that he will go with his colleagues to live in Otoh Gunga, but that he will always be thinking about her and the children. Padme says that she will come to visit them frequently, and Anakin embraces her in a loving hug. Following this meeting, Yoda and Obi-Wan agree that it is time to make Anakin an official Jedi Master. They tell him that due to his resolve during this time of conflict, and because of his decision not to join Palpatine under immense pressure, even when he was facing pain, they were going to grant him the title of Jedi Master. Anakin's heart drops and he's ecstatic. At this point, Anakin feels comfortable confiding in the two, telling them that he and Padme were married and that the 2 children were his. Obi-Wan jests, telling Anakin that he had figured it out long ago, and Yoda gives Anakin more of a disappointed fatherly lecture. While there was nothing that they could do now, Yoda reminds Anakin that attachments can lead to the dark side. Anakin says that he knows, but he also knows of secret teachings that the Jedi are not providing to him that would help him save Padme, and he also knows about Palpatine's manipulation of the midichlorians to create life. While Sidious may have been lying to him, he knew that there were light side powers that were also detailed in secret areas of the archives only masters could access back in the day. Hesitantly, Yoda tells Anakin that he will teach him these powers, so long as he commits to remaining strong in the light side. Anakin says yes, and Yoda says that their journey would begin as soon as they landed on Naboo. For many years, things remain quite status quo. The Jedi manage to hide well in Otoh Gunga, and they even begin to pick up slightly on the Gungan accent, to the distaste of Obi-Wan. Padme, as promised, comes to visit them often. Boss Nass always greets her with a familiar headshake and lots of saliva. Luke and Leia train with their father, Yoda and Obi-Wan during this time, and they grow up learning the ways of the Force. Anakin cautions them to avoid any dark teachings, but he says that the Jedi clearly had not been right about everything. He tells his children to learn well from Uncle Yoda and Uncle Obi-Wan, but to remember that the Order had fallen because of certain teachings, along with a lack of clarity in the Force because of intertwining themselves with politics. Anakin teaches the children to stay true to themselves and to always follow what they believe to be right. Padme teaches them about the intricacy of galactic politics, and she provides them with a suitable imperial education. In secret, though, she imparts her own values onto them, teaching the kids that the Empire is wrong and that the Republic was far better for the galaxy at large. Anakin also begins to learn about how to become one with the Force and how to Force heal, if he would ever need to use it on Padme, like he had seen in his visions all those years ago. Meanwhile, Palpatine continues to keep in contact with Nala Se. For about a year, Nala Se attempts to perfect the clone that the Dark Lord desires. However, due to the incredible Force sensitivity of this subject, the clones always seem to turn out disjointed, insane, physically disabled, or some combination of all of the above. Eventually, though, she finds a subject that seems perfect. Even with all of the accelerated aging, the clone turns out incredibly well. When she informs Sidious of this, he is very pleased, and he leaves her to attend to other duties on Wayland. He takes the rapidly growing child and begins to raise him as Darth Vader, the apprentice that he had always wanted. He teaches him in the Sith ways and is incredibly cruel, demanding nothing but strength from the young child. The Sith becomes molded into Palpatine's twisted image, and he quickly picks up on the ways of the dark side. He has to in order to survive. While Anakin trains Luke and Leia, so too does Sidious train Anakin's clone. As the years progress, Sidious gives more mission to this clone to establish himself as a Sith and to prove himself to his master. In order to conceal the clone's identity to the public at large, he makes him don the same black suit as Vader does in the original trilogy, but this one is far more maneuverable. It is more of the intimidation factor than the practical aspect that Vader required. Palpatine's apprentice does incredibly well, and eventually, as he continues to grow, he is put in charge of the Inquisitors, just like Vader is in the original timeline. He also begins to earn a reputation throughout the Empire as stories spread of this new apprentice and his dark abilities. as the enforcer of the Emperor. After about 15 successful years in hiding on Naboo, something begins to stir within Anakin. He tells Obi-Wan and Yoda that he can sense something dark looming over the planet, and that he can feel a foreboding shadow in their futures. Yoda tells Anakin to calm his mind, as sometimes these visions were merely tricks of the Force. However, Anakin can't seem to shake this sensation. Obi-Wan listens to Anakin, but he can't figure out what's bothering his former apprentice so much. One night, Anakin puts through a secure holocall to Padme, and he details some of his frustrations to her. She soothes him, telling him that her and the children were just fine. What she doesn't know, however, is that the inquisitors were coming to Naboo. Rumors had been circulating the Empire for a long time about former Jedi being harbored on Naboo. The ISB was investigating Padme for an incredibly prolonged period, especially due to her tendency to oppose imperial legislation and military expansion within the Senate. They were watching her every move, and they found it peculiar how often she traveled to Otoh for diplomatic trips. Surely she didn't need to visit Boss Nass in person so frequently. This raised a suspicion among the Imperial leadership that she had been engaging in something nefarious with the boss, perhaps even a plot to start a violent insurrection. When Palpatine is informed of this by Colonel Yularen, head of the ISB, he sees this as a fantastic opportunity for his new apprentice to test his skills. So, Palpatine sends Vader to Naboo, along with a few other Inquisitors, to sniff out what's going on. At the very least, it would intimidate the senator, and perhaps she would be more muzzled in future Senate hearings. As soon as Vader arrives on Naboo, he can sense the presence of a Jedi. He had killed many in the past, but this felt different. He senses something so similar, yet in that same breath, something very different. When he lands in Theed, the sensation only grows stronger. At this point, the advanced aging has him at about 30 years old, and Vader is at the height of his youthful power. He approaches Padme's residence, accompanied by a contingent of Death Troopers, the fifth brother, and the seventh sister. When Padme goes out to greet Vader and the Inquisitors, her stomach does a swan dive. Vader takes off his helmet, revealing his face, and Padme is shocked. For a moment, she wonders if she's having a nightmare, but then realizes that this is all real. She asks if he's Anakin, and the clone laughs, saying that he's everything that Anakin was too weak to embrace. After all, Sidious had driven the fact into him that he was going to be like Anakin, but better, stronger, faster, more Sith-like, and more powerful. Vader asks her if she had seen any Jedi recently, and naturally, she responds with no. However, Vader doesn't believe her. He uses the mind probe technique to see if she's lying, the one that we see Kylo use in The Force Awakens and Maul in the Clone Wars. And while she's initially able to resist, her mind eventually gives way, and Vader finds out that there are other living Jedi on Otoh. He ignites his saber, prepared to strike the senator down right there for treason. However, he quickly thinks of a better idea. He had seen her children in his probing, and so he orders that the other two Inquisitors find Luke and Leia, which they do quickly. Then, Vader hatches a plan. Soon, the three Jedi hiding in Otoh would be his. Vader couldn't wait to face off against his genetic template and prove to Sidious that he was worthy of being a Sith. On Otoh, Anakin receives a call from Padme. When he picks it up, he's met not with the face of his wife, but instead with a horrible black mask and the sight of his children handcuffed to a table beside Padme, guarded by two dark-side Force users looming above them. Vader tells Anakin that he knew where he was hiding and that he had his wife and children imprisoned. He tells Anakin that if his Jedi friends didn't surrender, then his precious family would die. He also tells Anakin that he had called Imperial reinforcements to punish the Gungans for illegally harboring them for so long. They would be made an example of for the rest of the galaxy by an incredibly competent military commander. Vader cuts the message off, saying that Anakin has 24 hours to come to Theed, or else his family was dead. Anakin pleads with Nass for a bongo, and the Gungan leader gives it to him. Obi-Wan and Yoda agreed to go with Anakin, hoping that they would be able to help him in this duel. Anakin wishes the best to Nass, saying that he hopes he prevails against this Imperial threat. Nass says that he hopes Anakin can help Senator Amidala as well. Soon, a battle begins on two fronts. Nash calls together the Gungan tribes and assembles, like what I did there, the Gungan Grand Army, which is prepared for a battle in the swamps. Anakin, Yoda, and Obi-Wan reach Padme's residence in Theed, and they are quickly met with jeers from the Inquisitors. As the Jedi contingent is entering Padme's residence, the fifth brother and seventh sister ambush them, and they're momentarily caught off guard. However, given the fact that they'd been training extensively over the past decade, each of the Jedi quickly pulls their sabers to their hands and fends off blows from the Inquisitors. The Inquisitors call the Jedi weak, saying that they couldn't see the true vision of the Sith, and that they had maintained the doctrine of an order that had fallen to hypocrisy. The three Jedi keep their cool, though, and they manage to work together to disarm both of the Inquisitors and slice their hands off, leaving them permanently disarmed. After the three Jedi defeat their foes, they move into the dining room, where they could sense that Padme was with the kids. As this goes on, Nash leads the Gungans in a valiant effort to confront Imperial troops that had landed in the swamps of Naboo. A super Star Destroyer had entered orbit, and stormtroopers were pouring onto the surface. Using more guerrilla warfare tactics in their jungle, the Gungans are able to subdue many of the stormtroopers, who are conscripts, and they maintain a hold on their land. Much like the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, but with superior technology, the Gungans dig their heels in, and they battle their occupiers with ferocity. When Anakin reaches the dining room, he sees his family tied down by the man in the black mask, and he immediately recognizes the presence. It had been the dark, brooding one that he had been sensing for the past little while that nobody else seemed to see. Immediately, Anakin demands that this beast let his family go. There's something all too familiar about this as well. It almost feels like him, but twisted, dark, evil, an abomination. After this, the figure laughs, and he takes off his helmet, revealing to Anakin why it felt so familiar. They were the same person. For a second, Anakin wonders if this is all a vision in the Force, a test to see how he would hold up against something like this. But no, this is no test, this is no vision, this was reality. They were one and the same. But they weren't, because Anakin was good, and this thing, it was evil. Anakin is shocked, and he asks how this is possible. Vader tells him that he is everything Anakin couldn't be, and that he is more powerful than Anakin could have ever dreamed of becoming. His eyes are the deep Sith yellow that we see Anakin don in Revenge of the Sith. Immediately, Vader runs his saber through Padme's gut and laughs. Anakin screams out, and the other Jedi ignite their sabers, ready to battle this Sith. Vader cackles, telling Anakin that this is where the fun would begin, and they begin their duel. It doesn't last very long, though. It seems like a blur at first, with the Jedi jumping, spinning, and Anakin pulling off his fancy lightsaber maneuvers. But Anakin taps into some of his darker emotions, and the children in the corner can't seem to tell what's going on. It's all so fast. The Sith abomination cuts off Obi-Wan's hand, force-pushing him away into the corner. Yoda ends up going to help Obi-Wan, leaving Anakin on his own to fend against what he could only see as his alter ego. The two duel, and Anakin continues to feel his emotions bubbling up. However, he contains them. Instead, he does something completely unexpected. He manages to muster a power that he had been training with Yoda and Obi-Wan over the years, and summon the yellow Force judgment upon his Sith counterpart. This absolutely shocks the Sith into submission, and Anakin uses this as an opportunity to slice off Vader's hands and puts his saber towards his throat. Vader looks at him with nothing but hatred in his eyes, almost demanding that Anakin kill him. However, Anakin realizes that this would not be the way of the Jedi. This would not be the way of the hypocrites like Mace Windu in the past. No, Anakin chooses the true Jedi path. He doesn't kill like he killed Dooku on the ship above Coruscant. He turns off his lightsaber, puts it on his belt, and gives mercy to his clone, which absolutely baffles Vader. Then Anakin turns his attention to Padme, and he fights with the Force. He puts all of his energy into her, hoping, willing that she comes back to life. He uses this Force heal ability that he had been training for years, and he wills it into Padme, hoping that she comes back. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes of negotiating with the living Force, Padme's eyes flutter open, and Anakin can feel her presence restored. At this, Anakin smiles, and he collapses on the floor from exhaustion. Soon after hearing the commotion, medics come and take all of the Jedi out, along with Padme, to the medbay, where each of them are checked out medically. They also take Vader, who is baffled by Anakin's decision not to kill him. When Anakin wakes up, he visits Vader, asking him about Sidious. Vader tells Anakin that he's a strong master, and that the mercy Anakin had showed him was weakness. Anakin says that he hopes one day Vader could understand the purity and peace of the light, and then he leaves, knowing that that decision of mercy was one that actually had been stronger than his desire to kill. Boss Nass and the Gungans managed to hold off the Imperials for a very long time. However, it seems that the commander of the starship sent to deal with the insurrection was able to outsmart them all. Grand Admiral Thrawn, despite being a naval tactician, is also adept at ground combat. After studying Gungan art and seeing their battle tactics in action, he's able to draw them out into the open, and he defeats them, just like the Trade Federation did in The Phantom Menace. He takes Nass and Binks prisoner for the Emperor. Padme is shocked, and she gives a detailed account of the unjust attack on her by Imperial agents with no proof of her wrongdoing to the Senate. This does not go over well with her colleagues. Palpatine, who needs to maintain the semblance of democracy in his Senate, ends up turning on his apprentice. He tells Padme and the galaxy that this Sith abomination would be given a proper Imperial trial for his actions, and that he would be charged for his actions on Naboo, along with these rogue inquisitors who had done the same thing. Because this is a direct mission from Palpatine to his apprentice, there's no way to trace it back to him. And nobody believes the apprentice when he tries to admit to the galaxy that this was all Palpatine's command. While Palpatine may not have succeeded in eliminating Senator Amidala, he still maintained control of the Senate. In addition, he now knew that 3 Jedi that he had defeated 15 years ago still lived, and that they were roaming the galaxy. Eventually, he would find them. How do these events impact the final end of our story? Let's keep going to find out. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda agree to split up. Each of them go their separate ways in the galaxy. Obi-Wan goes to Tatooine in an attempt to escape the Imperial state that was so prevalent in the core and mid-rims. Yoda goes to Dagobah, truly entering hiding. They agree that one day, when the time is right, they will return to the galaxy to help Luke, Leia, and Anakin take down the Emperor. Anakin stays with Padme on Naboo, but he hides alone in the woods. Every so often, he covertly visits his family, and he trains his children by night. Luke and Leia grow more powerful by the day, and soon they'll be able to join their mother in the growing rebellion against tyranny. Each of our characters, though they're battered, are not broken. Their resolve is still there, and they're committed to standing up for what they believe in. Sidious's apprentice, in prison, allows his feelings to grow inside of him, his anger, his rage at Sidious's betrayal, and he begins to wonder if perhaps Anakin had been right. But instead of embrace the light, he turns more and more into the dark side, wanting to one day kill Sidious and take his throne, just as he was always destined to do. The galaxy remains under the watchful eyes of the ISB and of Sidious. However, the Gungan Revolution had sparked some hope in like-minded rebels across the galaxy. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and perhaps Palpatine's grip on the galaxy was not as firm as it seemed. Hey there folks, I hope that you enjoyed today's What If scenario. If you did like it, I'd recommend checking out this other video, What If Donald Trump Was the Republic Chancellor? If you have anything you'd like to say about this timeline, let's hear it in the comments. Would you like to see a part 2? What do you think would happen next, if you'd like to see the story continue? I hope that all of you have an incredible rest of your day, my fellow Star Wars nerds, and as always,